So what does it look like to break free from that system and change the mindsets? How does that actually look for your children? How does that actually look for you? Okay, let's start the conversation. Welcome back to part 2. In part 1, we talked about how the system came to be in the early 1800s. We talked about how that system was never designed to be in the best practice for children. So that brings us to part 2. Here we are making this leap into homeschooling, or considering this leap into homeschooling. What does it really look like when you trust your child and you trust yourself and you move forward in a different way of learning? One of the first shifts in deschooling is reclaiming your role as the decision maker for education in your family. Not the state, not the district, not the standards, you. I'm talking about educational sovereignty. It's that thing that if you didn't watch part 1, my daughter at 2.5 years old with a public school teacher as her mom, who was taking a look at all of the things she was going to do so young. She was running when she was 9 months old. She was talking when she was 8 months old. I mean, I had this idea as a public school teacher. This child was going to be a genius. Well, what did she do at 2.5 years old? Nearly stuck her middle fingers up at her mom and said, "I'm not going to perform for you, Mom. I'm not going to do this thing that you're trying to do, which is to put me in a box." And in that moment, I had to decide, do I move with her or do I move against her? And I had to start shedding all of the things that I had learned about education. I had to remove all of the things that were taught to me in my 6 years of schooling, of undergraduate and master's, and all of the years of my childhood in which I lived under the rule of the school system, right? Lived under the rule of my home. All these systems that I felt so obligated to, I had to literally step out when my daughter at 2.5 years old said, "Mom, no." I mean, it was like the most beautiful thing. I started a school for homeschoolers, and it was really the most wonderful thing that I've ever done. And I would tell parents that very thing. They would say, "How did you find the path of radical unschooling?" Well, you have a child who comes in really strong and says, "No more. I'm not going to be a part of systems anymore." And you either decide you're going to join in, or you decide that you're going to have, that incongruence with your child, which I did not want. I was dying to be mom, and I was dying to support my children in their own paths. I just didn't really understand what that looked like when I was a mom and I'd come from the schooling system, right? I was watching how she was developing. I was watching what she was doing, and she was ahead of schedule on everything, and I was delighted. Every doctor was saying she's precocious, right? So I'm hearing she's ready for more and more and more. We'd surround her with these puzzles and she'd solve all the puzzles like all at once. I mean, I just saw all of the things connecting for her. And I thought what was best was to provide her with more, until she said no more. She guided me into choosing to leave the system. That's how wise these children are. I talked about this in part 1, about these children. They are coming in empowered, and then we're disempowering them in the system, in our public education system. It's just the truth. I don't know how else to say it. Educational sovereignty means you get to define success in your home, for your family. Our children are real. They are growing. They have ideas. They have a natural desire to learn. The system takes away that natural curiosity for learning. And I know people will say, "My child loves to go to school." I'm not saying there are not teachers that are well-intentioned, that are doing all of the things that they can to provide for their students. I'm not saying they're not. I used to be that teacher for nearly 2 decades, but they're burnt out. Their jobs are not changing. They're going backwards in time, and they're all surviving just to get to their retirement. I know so many friends who are 10 years out from their retirement. They've put the past 30 years in. They're not going to leave now, even though the system is so broken. They're going to hang on for the next 10 years, no matter how exhausted they are, no matter how weary they are by the fact that they've seen the educational system get worse over time. I don't think that there's a teacher you can talk to that exists out in the United States that will say that the educational system has gotten better in the past 30 years. I think everybody's on board with it's gotten worse. There's no one size fits all in homeschooling. That is the point. So deschooling is more than just breaking up with the system. It's about coming into a relationship with your child. You can watch my video on how connection is what builds a strong homeschooling environment. When you trust your children, you begin to see that their interests are not distractions. They're pointing in the direction of where they want to go because it is intrinsically who they are. They will show you where their energy is, where their curiosity lies, and where their learning starts. You can trust that, and you can trust them. Following your child's lead is not passive, it's powerful. In our journey of deschooling as a family, it's been all of the feels. So what I invite you to do is just know that it's going to take time to get through it. It's going to take forgiving yourself. It's going to take allowing yourself to just break out of the rigidity that you probably have from your own personal experience with schooling, and as well really allowing your children to do the same. So in this process of deschooling, it physically can look like weeks of unwinding, just playing as a family, building those relationships. So one of the most important parts of deschooling is trusting your child, like stepping into a whole new paradigm of, okay, so this system tells the children, now you do this, now you do that, now you do this, now you do that. There is no part of my job as a teacher where I was not directing the children on what to do all day long, right? They would look to me as the authority of the room. Now what do we get to do? No matter how much I wanted them to be free in themselves, they knew that there was a point person, and that point person was the one that was going to get them from here to here. So now imagine that your child is home. Who's the point person? You're going to become the point person. So we want to direct it back to them, letting loose of the reins. Trusting your child doesn't mean doing nothing. It means letting them lead. Allowing them time and space to get to know themselves. Allowing them to see that, whoa, things are different. There's not going to be this person saying, and now this, and now that, and now this. They get to have authority in their own world again. And then they start to see the big picture of the world around them again. They probably got a glimpse every now and again if you took them on a vacation and you took them out of the structure of their life and they just got to go, whoa, there's so much more to life. I've said this before. When I was teaching elementary school in the public system, I literally was in a box and I used to think, how do I demonstrate this amazing part of history when I'm in said box? And at the time, there wasn't all the technology that we have now where I could maybe take them into that world a little bit more. So the best I could do is try to describe it. Sometimes I'd bring in images. I mean, we'd see it in books, but what's better than experiencing it in the world? So when the children are not a part of the system, they have much more flexibility to be out into the world. And the learning happens in every opportunity. So I invite you in this process of deschooling to just breathe, relax, give it time and space. I did mention before that if you're on the unschooling path, like we are, you would deschool. The math on it is you deschool for 1 month for every year that your child was in the system. So if they were in the system for 6 years, of course, then you deschool for 6 months. So in that time and space, you're not requiring your children to do anything. You're letting them exist. You're letting them see the big picture of the world. You're letting them have that authority over their learning, their likes, their dislikes. Learning is just a natural thing that we do. So if you're choosing a different path, which is the opposite extreme, say you're choosing the traditional path of homeschooling, you'd still want to do a period of deschooling for yourself, for your children. Let them decompress, let them relax, and watch, trusting yourself. This is truly one of the hardest parts of deschooling. Here's what you need to know. You've likely been conditioned that you need some sort of approval or permission to do this well. This trusting of yourself to educate your children in the best way you know how. So there's probably this thing in you where you're like, but I want this for my children. I think I can provide this for my children, but no, I can't, because that's why people are hired to be teachers. That's why they go to school and learn all of these things, because they know how to do it better than I know how to do it. Okay, I was very well trained as a teacher. Guess when I learned to be a teacher? Do you think that it was the 4 years of being in an education program? Do you think it was then the 2 years that I did my master's program? When do you really think I learned to become a teacher? It's like everything else, on-the-job experience. The moment I learned to be a teacher was when I actively became a teacher. And then I had to figure it out. Honestly, I graduated at 21 years old, and I was afraid to get my first classroom. So I was a teacher's aide, and I was very happy that it was so challenging to get a job. I graduated in 1995, and at that time, getting a classroom position was super challenging. There was so much competition. I think there's not as much of a competition these days. I don't think I know, because it's just not an enjoyable job to have. I love to go to my job every day. It's the best thing that I could do. What they might say is, I do the best I can, I enjoy the children that I'm with, and I keep trying to make a difference. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I'm holding out for that retirement that is 10 years away, or 15 years away, or 30 years away, whatever it might be. You don't need approval to trust yourself with your children's education. If I learned it on the job, you can learn it on the job. There's no difference in what I did as a classroom teacher. There's no difference in what I did as a classroom teacher learning on the job versus you becoming a homeschool parent, trusting yourself to provide for your children. I'm telling you, there's no difference. What I learned when I was in school, the best part of what I learned was on the job. I did my practicums is when I learned the most about being a teacher, because I was hands-on in there doing it. But there was a period of time in which I needed to learn. Then when I became a teacher of my own classroom, again, it was 3 years in, because I was so nervous about it. That was such a big responsibility, and I didn't feel secure in myself to do that. What I learned was, once I got the job, once I had the classroom, okay, now I'm figuring it out each and every day. Sure, I had the desire to be a teacher. I had the patience to be a teacher. I had some tools to be a teacher, but ultimately, I knew what was best for children, and I wanted to share that with my students. If you know what's best for your children and you want to share that experience with them, you're qualified. Not to mention, in most of the 50 states, you don't need qualifications to be a homeschool parent. Just so you know, most of us are healing as parents. We're healing from our childhood schooling, being ranked or not ranked, being rushed, being overlooked, all of the ways in which we are healing from those experiences. And sometimes that voice inside that tells you that you're doing it wrong, it's just an echo from your experiences. You can let that settle. You can learn to trust yourself more and more and more. You don't need a perfect plan. You need presence, you need flexibility, and you need courage. I've seen this so many times when a child starts to feel safe around, in this case, their own learning, which is really all encompassing, it's everything, they stop performing. When we as parents stop interrupting that process of natural learning because of our own fears, then that learning really starts to take root. It's truly a relaxing of your nervous system. To be a part of a system that expects so much, that doesn't consider you and your individual self, that it takes a lot of trust to believe that that's not true, that that's not needed. You might feel unsure sometimes, and that's okay. It's just a normal part of the process. Uncertainty is part of that healing. And the longer you walk on this path, the more you'll realize you didn't need to be trained to know your children. You already know them. So just know that it takes time. It's not something that you can expect of yourself overnight. So give yourself a break. You don't need to recreate school in your home. You get to reimagine education for your family, for your children, based on their needs. In its most simple form, deschooling is choosing connection over control.